Great. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first session in today's excellent higher ed Dreamin lineup. I am Jen Jackson, and I work at Boston University as the inaugural AVP for Digital Architecture and Technology Platforms in BU Virtual, supporting the online programs. And I'd first like to thank the Higher Ed Dreamin team for hosting today's event. And a special shout out to the Attain team of Leidy Smith, Alana Steffens, Jason Balan, Deepa Betty, and for their partnership over the years and helping us to get to a point where we are at for sharing today. A couple of housekeeping notes. I think Haley already mentioned this, but we do have time at the end for a Q&A, so feel free to post any questions you have in the Q&A tab, and it's over in the right-hand side of the screen under the session, not the session chat, it's just the Q&A tab, and that way the questions will be teed up for me at the end of the session today. So moving to the next slide. So a little bit about BU Virtual. BU Virtual was born around the 22-23 timeline and reports into the Provost Office as a central unit to support all 17 BU schools and colleges in the delivery of their online programs. BU Virtual stems originally from the 2030 strategic plan that ties into what our now president calls the strategic pillars of our university. So being an intellectual and academic destination, a world-class community of talent, and being globally and externally engaged. So BU Virtual supports over 95 online degree and certificate programs where we work in a consultative manner across the entire BU campus. And we support the full student life cycle from marketing and recruitment of programs through admissions and enrollment, through course creation to course launch. And we also have a dedicated student success team that ensures that students persist through all the way to graduation and hopefully return as lifelong learners. We do have evidence that we have students completing one degree program and they're then enrolling into other degree programs, which is really exciting. And I saw that if you touch your screen, those like fireworks go off. So yeah, that's a moment for celebration. Thank you. So another differentiator is we also have a dedicated learning design team that works with our faculty to design and develop the curriculum and the instructional design. And we also have a fully equipped professional live studio and media team that produces weekly synchronous live classes. And lastly, we have an operations team that prepares courses from semester to semester. They do quality assurance checking. They ensure the launch readiness of a program and a course, and then they make sure that the course is delivered through a delivery process, and then monitors the course throughout the semester. So moving to the next slide, BU Virtual is growing. Over the last 2 years, we've seen a 62% growth in the number of our courses that we're operating. And if you count the individual sections of each course, then the count actually jumps to 113% growth over the last 2 years. We do have a global portfolio that supports the non-traditional online students around the world. And so these students are typically mid-career adult learners looking to either make a career change or a career transition or just upskill in their existing career. And as our portfolio continues to grow, we have to continually evaluate our operational model to find efficiencies and ensure that we're supporting the evolving needs, not only of our students and our faculty, but also how do we streamline and continuously improve our own internal processes. So I'm sure many of you feel this every day, but the higher ed landscape is majorly changing. What I didn't tell you about myself earlier is that I am not only a full-time employee at BU, but I'm also a parent of an incoming freshman. And now that my kids are getting older and I'm finding that I have more time available, I've started taking classes again. And so I am the definition of a non-traditional student. And part of it was not just to fill my time, but to take theory and put it into practice. But I also really wanted to feel what it's like to be a student in 2026. And I especially wanted to feel what it's like to be a student at BU, because if I am supporting the systems, I want to really experience them firsthand as a student and see what it feels like to operate within those systems. So I'm not only speaking from these cited works on this slide, but also from personal experience that students really do expect that digital first higher ed experience. Post-COVID, the world has changed, and 75% of institutions are seeing an increased demand for online graduate education. 66% of the growing demand is coming from those non-traditional aged students. And these are those adult learners that used to be somewhat of an invisible group on campus, but now we're really putting a spotlight on them because there's so many more of them. And so 82% of those students want more proactive and personalized support, not just the adult learners, but even the undergraduate population as well. And so these are digital consumers. They're already experiencing in other industries what it's like to consume information and interact with information in a digital manner. And so they have those same expectations in a higher ed setting. And so with these new demands, and I'm not going to talk about AI that much today, but obviously AI also is putting this new demand on higher ed. We really are under pressure to really transform the way we deliver our program and our portfolio. So we started our journey with really getting to know our audience. We did some persona mapping early on, and I don't know if Corey Snow is on here, but a shout out to his team we worked with back in the day around really figuring out who is the adult learner population that BUV is supporting. So historically, the BU systems were often catered to that residential, traditional undergraduate aged student. And upon arriving at BU, it was really clear that adult learners are motivated very differently than the undergraduate population. And so how do we set a new foundation for how we engage with these adult learners differently? Because they really are motivated differently. So most of our BU virtual students, after doing our persona mapping, are adult learners. They're already in the workforce. They're juggling a full-time career. And in many cases, they have family commitments. They're taking part-time classes through BU virtual. And we know that these students are interacting during non-peak hours. So these are not typical business hours, Eastern Standard Time, which really needs us to reconsider how do we support these students? When do we hold live sessions? How do we hold office hours? How do we accommodate different time zones in the AM and the PM? How do we support students when they're working and submitting assignments on nights and weekends? So BU is not alone. Institutions are in the process of re-architecting their learner journey to meet these new demands for these non-traditional learners. Historically, we had siloed programs that were serviced by the individual schools. So if you cross-registered from one BU school to another BU school, it could feel like you were having a completely different experience as if you were in a different BU. There was not necessarily a cohesion across schools, yet the students are all getting the same BU branded degree. So we elevated our design from course-specific design to more of a programmatic design. And that way we are having people matriculate through our programs so that every single engagement along the way results in emotions that translate to whether they're having a good or a negative experience at BU. And each of those engagements are not just one-time transactions, but they're really journeys that result in how the student is experiencing our programs over time. And so we're aiming to build that relationship with each student so that they not only have a sense of belongingness when they are here as a student, but also so that they become proud alumni and hopefully continue to engage with us through various relationships, whether that be through alumni engagement or re-enrolling in another degree program or a certificate program with us. It really is to build that lifelong relationship with them. So step 2, we looked at the full student journey and built the vision for what a unified student experience could look like. So if you look at the middle of the slide with the purple box, we started first with building out what we call the BU virtual campus. So these are where enrolled students go to engage at the program level. The new virtual campus community was built to provide students with a one-stop shop experience so that they could access all of the program information from a single location. So this was built on top of a Salesforce Experience Cloud, and we built what we call BUV Vanilla because we wanted the solution to be scalable to future programs so that it doesn't matter which program you're enrolled in, each program will have a similar layout with common content, yet the autonomy for program-specific information. We have things like case management and knowledge articles, appointment scheduling, resources, announcements, student networking, affinity groups, and event management, all housed within that single experience cloud, along with key contacts for academic student success. And I do want to also take a moment to shout out to Attain and also Salesforce Professional Services. I think Joy is on this call as well, because they were instrumental when we worked with them on the first phase of this project, which launched back in fall of 2024. At the time, the online MBA was the only program that was already using Salesforce. And so we mirrored a lot of their best practices, but we enhanced the foundation so that it really could scale for all of our programs in the future. So we moved the online Master of Data Science program into the BU Virtual Campus in September of 2024. Then we migrated the online MBA in December of 2024, and then the Master of Public Health in April of 2025. And now we have what we call a blueprint that we're following because we have 5 new AI-related programs that are being launched this fall 2026. One is AI for business, AI for education, AI for computer science, AI for software engineering, and AI for the enterprise. So I know we're here for Marketing Cloud. And so if you look at the bottom of the slide, we separated out the Marketing Cloud implementation into 3 different phases that support the full life cycle of the student. So we call phase 2 the pre-admit phase. So it's really pre-admit through post-admit. And then phase 3 is focused on student success. And then the final phase is on alumni engagement. So step 3, it really does take a village. We couldn't be where we are without our partners in Central IT and in the Questrom School of Business IT. I'm not sure about your schools, but throughout my career, it seems like business schools are always a little bit ahead. And so in our case, BU's Questrom School of Business was already set up with a Salesforce org, and they already had a Marketing Cloud instance. So we basically moved into their org and their Marketing Cloud instance, but we stood up our own BU Virtual Experience Cloud, and then we created our own BU Virtual Business Unit. And complementary to this project, we also are working very closely with Central IT, and I want to give a special shout out to Tim Serrato. I don't know if he's on this call, and I see I have 15 minutes, but we are in the process of setting up across all of BU a unified engagement platform that allows us to integrate with the upstream systems like the student information system, which in our case is PeopleSoft Campus Solutions, and eventually with our LMS, which is Blackboard Ultra. And the idea is that we would have all of our data commonly integrated and governed and available for a wider set of data analytics. So this slide just shows a snapshot of what the BU Virtual Campus looks like. As I mentioned, we intended to have it as a scalable blueprint that we can roll out for each program. It allows for a common layout, yet that autonomy at the program level where needed. And when I think about this like platform, it really is students are never stepping foot onto the physical campus. So this is essentially the office that students walk into for help. Instead of walking in, to different offices on campus, they're logging into the BU Virtual Campus and hopefully finding what they need or leads them to where they need to go. We were aware of this phrase, the BU bounce. So I guess that's when people get bounced from department to department. I'm not sure if your campuses have that problem, but we were having a lot of BU bounce problems where students weren't getting the answers that they needed. And so this was an attempt at housing all of the information in a single location so that students aren't bounced all over the place. So step 4, moving into personalized communications, we had a recognition that we needed a scalable communications tool. Historically, every school was communicating with students differently, and there were all different types of tools being used, all the way from fancy industrial level tools to individuals sending off ad hoc emails from personal Outlook accounts. And so we recognized the need for Marketing Cloud. I think Marketing Cloud personally has a really bad name because it sounds like we're only using it for marketing and recruiting of our programs. But in fact, we really want to use it as a communications vehicle for the full student life cycle. And so what we're really trying to do is move away from the transactional one-off emails to more of those manually and the manually generated communications to more of a automated messaging platform. So it could be scaled as our programs grow, that we could have that curated high touch cadence that results in those students feeling that emotional sense of commitment and belonging in BU. And after all, our ultimate goal is to ensure that students persist through our programs. And so this is really intended to be a true paradigm shift so that we are creating that emotional sense of belonging with the students. As I mentioned, I'm not sure how many of you are running shadow systems without the assistance of your central IT office, but if you are, I really hope you walk away from today's event wanting to build stronger relationships with your IT partners. In our case, we are setting up the marketing journeys, which frankly probably isn't the hardest part. The harder part was getting all of the data from the true sources of truth. Because that's the data that truly triggers the different stages of your journeys. And so when we started this project, we had over 90 different website pages collecting leads in all different types of technologies, some dumped to local systems at each of the schools. Some of those systems were sophisticated, some were less sophisticated. We also made a concerted effort to reduce the number of fields required to create a lead because we wanted to reduce that barrier for lead ingestion from those sites. There's also varying levels of different third-party marketing partners across our 17 schools. So we now have the ability to ingest leads from all different types of locations, and we put them into what we call BULIP, the BU lead ingestion process, which then has the ability not only to ingest, but then to feed multiple sources, internal sources of truth within BU. We're also in the middle of institution-wide admissions systems implementation. So we wanted to keep the system fields agnostic to the admission system because, you know, when we think of the statuses that will change the different types of communication journeys, it's really those high level data, you know, when did I inquire? When did I start my application? When did I submit my application? When did I make a deposit? And so we wanted to be able to be system agnostic to whatever admission system we have, and to build our journeys so that we could swap out the admission system in the middle. We also, if you look at the far end on the right of the slide where all the people are, those are representing the students. And so we have both a push and a pull mechanism. So the communications are pretty much pushed to the students, but the virtual campus is a mechanism for students to then pull information. So we have both happening simultaneously. And Frank made a really good point in our opening session, because if we don't have the solid data, we won't be able to move towards agentic marketing. And so this infrastructure is our first step and a critical step in making sure that we have the sources of truth. And I see it's time to move to Q&A, and I do have like two more slides.
I know you have like I think Jason's probably okay with you finishing just a little bit. You guys have,
okay.
You have until 2:31.
I have two more slides.
You're good.
Okay. So step 6, personalized, repeatable, and scalable journeys. So these are not the exact set of journeys we've built, but it highlights the types of themes that we're going after. So how do we have repeatable journeys? How do we have automated flows? How do we have contacts as campaign members? Our communications are triggered by events and data extensions. So for example, if a prospect completes an interest form from our website or from an admission application started, or from any of those other status changes that I already mentioned, we're trying to have different triggers that will then change each of those journeys. The last slide is really some of our business value add. And you know, it's often hard to quantify our ROI, but just for example, automating the enrolled students from the SIS saves at least 5 to 8 hours a week, which over the course of a year is 240 to 360 hours. And so being on a single platform, capturing all the leads in a single location, having reusable communication journeys and templates, having automated integrations, is really the goal of what we're trying to do. And so my very last slide is know your audience, have a vision, have governance, and really think about your architecture, because then you'll be able to build your personalized, repeatable, and scalable journeys. So my last comment is we are super agile and iterative and not trying to do this in a big bang. So as I mentioned, we are going program by program, which I think also has allowed us to tweak along the way. So thanks, everyone.
I'm gonna use my confetti to add to the screen. And that was awesome. Thank you so much. Wow, you're doing such incredible work. Great questions in the chat, but I just want to thank you, and Haley, thank you. Thank the whole team that put together the event. It's incredible doing this so much more. Thank you. I want to get into the question from one thing that was, as you were all a cohesive journey that this experience across all programs. Conceptually, that makes sense to everyone. Yes, we want to do that, but when it gets down to it, you know, you're negotiating a lot between programs. what, how it's going to actually, how did you kind of navigate that and make the case for why we're doing all these kind of maybe complex things?
Yeah, Jason, we're having some. I feel like we're kind of catching every like second or third syllable. If you want to try that again.
Can you hear me now?
That is so much better. Oh my gosh, yes. You had a great question. You want to ask that one more time?
So Jen, awesome. Here's a quick question. You're doing a lot of great work across the student. It's fantastic work you're doing, but navigate all of these different departments at all once, and it all agree, yes, we're all willing to trade-offs, compromise to achieve that experience. How did you just getting the buy-in? Because there's trade-offs.
Yeah, it's still happening a little bit, but I think your question was how are you navigating the buy-in and the trade-offs between the different departments? Is that the question, Jason? Okay, and we'll figure out your audio, I promise.
So it's been quite a journey, no pun intended, to try to establish the vision. I think getting first of all, because BU Virtual is so young in its mission and it's really counter to the types of personas that historically were serviced by the rest of the university, we've sometimes been seen as an outlier. And so telling our story over and over and over, like I was probably talking very fast, but I'm so used to repeating this story now so many times because the importance of that that persona of understanding why these students really do need to be serviced differently is really important to the success of our programs. And so I do think that once people understand it, they want to partner, and then just keep pulling people together. I am very much someone who wants to bring everybody into every conversation because you never know which nugget they're gonna realize hits them at their moment. So not only repeating the story over and over, but also pulling people together so that they have a shared vested interest.
And Jen, there's a question that came in here around how big is your team in doing all this work, and you also touched on your relationship with central IT. Can you just talk about how BU is thinking out what is the role of central IT here? What is the role of the individual business units? What does the team look like?
We have a very, 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 very small team. So there's me and one other person in BU Virtual that supports the Salesforce environment. There are 2 people in Questrom IT, and then there are about 3 people in central IT, but they're not all working on our projects 100%. And so we also are negotiating priorities all the time and how to make sure that our priorities are balanced with their other work as well.
That's great. And I see Florence. Hi, Florence. Good to see you. Florence had a question here. Just what are you hearing from students? You talked about sense of belonging. What's some of the initial feedback, and maybe how are you hoping to start hearing more from students in terms of their feedback?
That's a great question. I feel like we don't outreach students enough. I feel like we hear from the program directors and the learning facilitators and the faculty a lot of what students need. We do have metrics from mid-year reviews and program reviews at the end. And then there's some informal conversations that take place, but this is an area we probably can improve along the way.
And there's a couple questions that came in just more technical, just in terms of how you're thinking about your Salesforce instance. Is this all in one instance? You have multiple instances? Architecturally, what does that look like?
So right now, BU Virtual sits within the Questrom org. So it's one Salesforce org and one marketing cloud with separate business units.
Great. And Haley, maybe we have one more question. Time for one more. Maybe I'll land.
Time for one more. Maybe
Okay.
even 2. We'll see how you do.
Thank you. I'll just land on the one. Is not the easiest question sometimes, but let's just talk about governance. You're taking this iterative approach. How's it going with governance so far? Maybe are there lessons you're learning as you keep tweaking the process?
Yep. So we are working with our central IT partners to eventually move into a centralized org. And that is something that we are taking a very cautious look at because we don't want to disrupt what we have already built. And so we're actively working on how do we keep the train running and keep going, yet how are we thoughtful about the future of where we want to be. I think that there's a lot of lessons learned around data governance that have to be figured out if we move into a central org, because we are learning even just little things about how the SIS processes the data and how it's interpreted differently for different programs. And if someone changes the hierarchy, how does it affect downstream hierarchies? And there's just a lot of lessons to be learned. But I think sharing that information as we learn it, because we're all one team, even though we're different teams, like we're all one team, has allowed us to really build out this vision of where we want to be going and how do we get there together.
Awesome. Jen, thank you so much. You're awesome. This is great, very inspiring. And thanks to the whole team for having us here today.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, Jennifer. This was a really great presentation. That effort is really great and fascinating. I would love to learn more myself. And Jason, thank you so much for helping out and for sponsoring our event. We really appreciate it.